Beneath the prehistoric oceans, survival was a constant struggle. Every shadow could hide a hunter. Every new adaptation forced another creature to evolve. For hundreds of millions of years, nature kept rewriting the rules of survival. These were the impossible creatures born from that endless competition. The answers are written across hundreds of millions of years of evolution, and they begin with a predator that once ruled an ancient ocean. But before we begin, make sure you're subscribed, because this is only the first chapter in an extraordinary journey through Earth's prehistoric past. Long before whales became the giants of the sea, another predator stood at the very top of the ocean food chain. It was not a shark. It was not a dinosaur. It was Mosasaurus. For millions of years during the late Cretaceous, very few animals could challenge its dominance. Growing to more than 40 feet in length, it moved through the ancient oceans with the confidence of a predator that had almost nothing to fear. Its enormous size was only part of the story. The true secret of its success was hidden inside its skull. Unlike the skulls of many other predators, the bones of a mosasaur's skull could move slightly against one another. This flexibility allowed it to maintain a powerful grip on struggling prey while guiding it deeper into its mouth. The roof of its mouth held another extraordinary adaptation. A second row of teeth, called pterygoid teeth, worked like a built-in gripping system. Once prey slipped past the front jaws, these teeth helped prevent escape, drawing the victim farther back with each movement of the jaws. That feeding system made Mosasaurus one of the most versatile hunters of its time. Fish sharks, ammonites, sea turtles, seabirds, and even other marine reptiles could all become prey. Sometimes that opportunity included another mosasaur. Life at the top of the food chain was never without danger. Even an apex predator could become tomorrow's meal when luck was not on its side. With immense power-efficient swimming and remarkably effective feeding adaptations, Mosasaurus became one of the last great apex predators of the age of dinosaurs. In its heyday, the Mosasaurus reigned supreme in the oceans, virtually unrivaled. Yet even the greatest rulers cannot hold the throne forever. The history of the seas is a constant stream of succession, where new predators always emerge to inherit the legacy of their predecessors. And this time, it was Helicoprion, a prehistoric creature whose most remarkable weapon was not its size or strength, but a set of teeth unlike anything seen before. For more than a century, paleontologists debated one simple question: where did this extraordinary spiral actually belong? The answer proved even stranger than anyone expected. Instead of shedding old teeth like modern sharks, it kept every tooth it ever produced. New teeth formed continuously at the back of the jaw, pushing older ones forward until they created a tightly packed spiral unlike anything else in the fossil record. During the Permian, the oceans teemed with ammonoids and squid-like cephalopods, agile prey that could quickly slip away from an attacking predator. In an environment shaped by intense competition, securing a meal before it escaped could mean the difference between survival and starvation. For millions of years, the jaw of the Helicoprion remained a nightmare for smaller prehistoric creatures. Helicoprion likely cruised through ancient seas, measuring up to 8 meters in length, hunting soft-bodied prey such as squid-like cephalopods that were abundant during the Permian. This feeding system solved a problem every predator faces, capturing prey before it can escape. Most marine hunters relied on speed-crushing power or continually replacing damaged teeth. Helicoprion invested in a single structure that became larger and more effective throughout its lifetime. However, Helicoprion was not the only predator in the ancient oceans to evolve an unusual feeding system. During the Carboniferous period, another predator known as Edestus developed an equally complex dental structure. Instead of a spiral, Edestus carried 2 long rows of teeth, one along the upper jaw and one along the lower. New teeth formed at the front, while older ones were pushed forward, extending beyond the mouth like curved blades. When the jaws closed, these 2 rows slid past each other, acting much like a pair of massive shears cutting through water and flesh. Edestus also helps show that prehistoric oceans were never stable or predictable. One dominant predator did not guarantee lasting control. When one disappeared, another would rise to take its place, and the struggle for survival continued without pause. During the Devonian period, often called the Age of Fishes, life in the oceans was changing at an extraordinary pace. It was a time when fish were no longer simple, soft-bodied creatures drifting through the seas. Instead, many lineages began evolving heavy armor, powerful jaws, and increasingly complex hunting strategies. Many fish evolved thick, bony armor that protected their heads and shoulders, making them far more difficult to kill than earlier prey. Better armor demanded an even better weapon. One animal answered that challenge better than almost anything else in the sea: Dunkleosteus. For years, it was depicted as a colossal monster stretching over 33 feet in length. However, modern research suggests it was likely much smaller, with most adults reaching only 13 to 16 feet. But its reputation was never built on size alone. Its greatest advantage lay in the way it attacked. Unlike sharks, Dunkleosteus had no true teeth. Instead, its jaws were equipped with thick bony plates that sharpened themselves every time the animal opened and closed its mouth. Rather than wearing down over time, the cutting edges remained ready for another strike. Dunkleosteus's hunting mechanism is just as impressive as that of Mosasaurus or Helicoprion. This fish can open its jaws with lightning speed, creating an extremely strong vacuum to draw prey into position. Immediately afterward, the jaws, made of sturdy bone, close, creating enough pressure to penetrate any natural defenses. It was those powerful jaws that made Dunkleosteus the most formidable creature of the Devonian period, setting a new standard for predatory power in evolutionary history. Fossils also reveal that life at the top of the food chain was anything but peaceful. Some specimens preserve healed bite marks likely inflicted by other Dunkleosteus, suggesting violent confrontations over territory, food, or mates. Even the ocean's most formidable hunter could not avoid competition from its own kind. For millions of years, Dunkleosteus ranked among the most powerful vertebrate predators of the Devonian seas. In the same Devonian world, another predator emerged, no less formidable and arguably even more terrifying: Jaekelopterus. Jaekelopterus belonged to a group known as Eurypterids, often called sea scorpions. Although they were distant relatives of modern spiders and horseshoe crabs, rather than true scorpions, they became some of the largest arthropod predators ever known. The largest individuals could exceed 8 feet in length, making Jaekelopterus a giant arthropod. In an age when vertebrate predators were still diversifying, an animal with an external skeleton had already risen to the top of many freshwater and coastal ecosystems. Its success came from other adaptations. At the front of its body was a pair of large spincers designed to seize struggling prey. Once captured, the prey was pulled toward the mouth and processed. Unlike Dunkleosteus, which relied on crushing force, Jaekelopterus depended on speed, reach, and precise control of its prey. Its large compound eyes provided excellent vision for detecting movement, while broad paddle-like limbs helped propel it efficiently through the water. Together, these adaptations made it an active hunter rather than a slow-moving ambush predator. Fossil evidence and comparisons with related Eurypterids suggest a varied diet. Early armored fish, smaller Eurypterids, and other aquatic invertebrates likely formed much of its prey. In ecosystems where competition was intense, few medium-sized animals could have ignored the threat posed by such a predator. Jaekelopterus also challenges one of the most common assumptions about prehistoric life. For a time, one of the most formidable hunters in the water was not a fish at all, but a giant arthropod. Its rise was a reminder that the prehistoric world favored no single group of animals. It favored whatever design worked best in a particular environment. And for millions of years, that design belonged to Jaekelopterus. Every new predator seemed to bring a more sophisticated way to hunt. But that raises an even bigger question. Where did this endless race between hunter and prey actually begin? The answer lies more than 500 million years in the past. Over 500 million years ago, at the beginning of the Cambrian period, the oceans appeared in a completely different form. Fish had not yet evolved. There were no sharks, no marine reptiles, and no whales. Instead, the seabed is home to bizarre prehistoric creatures, including trilobites, worm-like animals, and mollusks that only appeared recently during the Cambrian period. For many prehistoric organisms, survival depended on avoiding danger rather than confronting it. However, the ancient oceans were never without predators, and this time, that predator was Anomalocaris. Reaching nearly 1 meter in length, it was enormous by Cambrian standards. In an ocean where most animals measured only a few centimeters, Anomalocaris occupied a position few creatures could challenge. Its body was built for active hunting. Flexible side flaps propelled it smoothly through the water, while two large compound eyes provided one of the most advanced visual systems of its time. These eyes, made up of thousands of individual lenses, allowed it to detect movement with remarkable precision in the murky waters of the Cambrian seas. At the front of its body were two long, spiny appendages that worked like grasping arms. They could seize prey before drawing it toward a circular mouth lined with hardened plates. For many years, scientists believed that the mouth was powerful enough to crush the hard shells of trilobites. More recent studies suggest otherwise. Although Anomalocaris probably hunted trilobites on occasion, its mouth was better suited for gripping softer-bodied animals than breaking heavily mineralized armor. Creatures such as worm-like priapulids, early arthropods, and other soft-bodied prey were likely more common targets. Yet its importance extends far beyond what it ate. Anomalocaris represents one of the earliest known large predators capable of actively pursuing prey through open water. Its appearance may have changed the course of evolution itself. As predators became faster, more intelligent, and better equipped to hunt, prey faced new pressures to survive. Harder shells improved senses, burrowing behavior, and more effective defenses began appearing across many groups during and after the Cambrian. In many ways, Anomalocaris was more than just a successful hunter. It was one of the first signs that life had entered an evolutionary arms race, one that would shape every ocean ecosystem for the next 500 million years. Anomalocaris demonstrated how quickly evolution could produce an effective predator. But not every remarkable animal of the Cambrian was built to chase or overpower its prey. Some survived by solving a very different set of challenges. Few illustrate that better than Opabinia. When the first fossils were presented in the 1970s, many scientists were so surprised by its appearance that the reconstruction reportedly drew laughter from the audience. Yet every unusual feature served a purpose. The Cambrian explosion was not searching for a perfect design. It was exploring countless possibilities, and Opabinia was one of the boldest experiments. The five eyes likely gave Opabinia an exceptionally wide field of view, helping it detect movement in the busy Cambrian seafloor. Its overlapping side flaps allowed it to glide smoothly through the water, while the flexible proboscis could reach into narrow spaces that larger predators could not access. Rather than hunting large animals, Opabinia probably fed on small, soft-bodied creatures living on or just beneath the seafloor. Tiny worms, organic debris, and other delicate prey could be picked up with the claw-like tip of its proboscis before being passed to its mouth beneath the head. This feeding strategy reduced direct competition with larger hunters, such as Anomalocaris. Instead of competing for the same prey, different animals began exploiting different parts of the environment. Even in these early oceans, evolution was already dividing ecosystems into specialized roles. That may be one of the Cambrian's most important lessons. Success did not always belong to the biggest or most powerful predator. Sometimes it belonged to the animal that discovered a food source others overlooked. Opabinia provides us with new insights into the prehistoric world. The oceans were teeming with strange and unfamiliar life forms, yet each bizarre design played a role in shaping the ever-increasing complexity of life on the ancient seafloor. Not every survivor of the Cambrian needed to become larger or more powerful. Hallucigenia proves that sometimes the most successful strategy was simply to make yourself too difficult to understand and too difficult to eat. Measuring less than 5 centimeters in length, Hallucigenia would have seemed insignificant beside the predators roaming the Cambrian seas. Yet its body looked unlike almost anything that had come before. Slender, flexible legs supported its weight, while a row of long, rigid spines stretched along its back, forming what was likely a protective barrier against predators. Rather than hunting large prey, Hallucigenia most likely fed on microbial mats, organic particles, and other tiny organisms scattered across the Cambrian seafloor. Its small mouth and relatively simple feeding apparatus suggest it was a slow, methodical feeder, quietly grazing while much larger predators searched for their next meal. In many ways, Hallucigenia represents a different side of evolution. The history of life is often told through giants and predators, but ecosystems are not built by hunters alone. They also depend on countless smaller animals that survive by occupying niches no one else can exploit. Hallucigenia may never have ruled the Cambrian seas, but its strange body reminds us that survival is not always about becoming stronger. Sometimes it is about becoming different enough that evolution never needs to repeat the same design again. Over the next hundreds of millions of years, oceans transformed again and again, while repeated extinction events erased countless evolutionary experiments and opened the door for entirely new ones. By the Middle Triassic, marine ecosystems had recovered from the greatest mass extinction in Earth's history. Fish had become abundant once more, cephalopods flourished, and early marine reptiles were rapidly diversifying. Among them was one animal whose proportions seemed to ignore every familiar rule of anatomy: Tanystropheus. Its neck accounted for more than half of its total body length, yet it was supported by only 13 extraordinarily elongated vertebrae. Rather than serving as a burden, this unusual structure gave Tanystropheus access to prey that other reptiles struggled to reach. Evidence from its skull suggests it spent much of its time hunting in shallow coastal waters. Remaining relatively still, it could extend its narrow head towards schools of fish or passing cephalopods, while keeping its heavier body farther away. A sudden sideways snap of the jaws left little opportunity for nearby prey to escape. As ray-finned fishes became increasingly diverse and ammonoids once again filled the seas after the end Permian extinction, Predators no longer needed to rely on overwhelming power alone. Success also belonged to hunters capable of exploiting opportunities that others overlooked. Tanystropheus reflects that shift perfectly. Its body was not built to win a chase across open water, but to take advantage of a very specific ecological niche. In doing so, it reminds us that evolution often rewards specialization just as much as strength. The oceans we know today are only the latest chapter in a story that has been unfolding for more than 500 million years. Hidden beneath every fossil is another reminder that Earth's greatest survivors were not always the strongest, but the ones that adapted when the world around them changed. If you enjoyed exploring this incredible journey through prehistoric life, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next expedition into Earth's distant past. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep exploring. Years ago, in what is now North Forest, lived in a landscape domes and wetlands. Around 100 Unlike most large theropods, its anatomy suggests a strong association with water. Its long, narrow snout and conical teeth were well suited for gripping slippery prey, and fossils indicate it likely fed on large fish, such as Onchopristis. In these aquatic environments, Spinosaurus may have occupied a niche with relatively limited competition from other large predators. This specialization also meant that its survival was closely tied to these environments. Evidence suggests that North Edestus experienced environment including changes in river systems, as wetlands shrank the availability of aquatic. However, stable over time, spend more time outside its preferred. If these habitats became less, this could have increased the chances of encountering other large predators that were already well adapted to life on land. One of these was Carcharodontosaurus, a massive theropod with blade-like teeth designed for slicing through flesh. It was built for terrestrial hunting prey across open landscapes. Unlike conflict between Carcharodontosaurus remains limited, if they may have occasionally crossed around carcasses. Direct evidence of predators are drawn to the same mission over a kill can be intense. Differences in behavior play in. Spinosaurus has the advantage, while Carcharodontosaurus is. This is not simply a conflection of adaptation. In encounters like these, the balance balance between species shift. Specialized animals like spinal changes in habitat can lead. As the environment changes, world are endless, and are. Subscribe now. The mysteries of the In the forests of northeastern China during the early Cretaceous, evolution was testing a very different idea. Hidden within these forests is a mysterious prehistoric creature, Microraptor. It was small, feathered, and built for movement through the air, but not in the way modern birds fly. Its feathers formed aerodynamic surfaces not only along its arms, but also along its legs, creating what looked like 4 distinct wings. To glide rather than generate. By launching from trees, and it could control lift and direct in long, stable arcs. Some reconstructions suggest a biplane arrangement, where the front and rear wings work together to improve stability during descent. They're highly effective in the canopy from above and avoid many threats. This ability but its design came with a trade-off. Without the muscle structure for sustained flapping, it could not climb back into the air once it had descended. And on the forest floor, its long flight feathers became a disadvantage, restricting movement and making it slower to react. This left it exposed to injury or attack whenever it was forced out of the trees. That vulnerability becomes clearer when compared to its close relative, Sinornithosaurus. Larger and more versatile, Sinornithosaurus was as effective on the forest floor as it was in the branches. Its feathered body offered near-perfect camouflage, but its most lethal secret may have been hidden in its jaws. Some researchers point to grooved teeth as evidence of a venom delivery system, a trait that draws striking comparisons to the modern Gila monster. If true, it wasn't just a fast hunter, but a venomous one. A transitional stage in evolution emerged from the same lineage as. Together, these animals were. On the island of Madagascar during the late Cretaceous, survival often depended on how efficiently a predator could use every available resource. Dominant carnivores in this isolate with a short, deep skull designed not for slicing, bust, better suited cleanly through flesh. Its teeth were thick. Fossil evidence reveals something more revealing about its behavior. Bones attributed to Majungasaurus have been found bearing bite marks that match its own dental pattern. They appear in locations indicating that individuals of this provides not as speculation behavior preserved in the fossil record. reason behind this behavior likely lies in environmental pressure. Madagascar during this period was relatively isolated, with limited large prey compared to continental ecosystems. Food availability may have fluctuated, especially during dry periods. This became a critical resource. Feeding on an exception, but a practice. In such conditions, a carcass. This behavior is not unique in nature. Many modern predators, including reptiles and fish, will consume their own kind when conditions demand it. In this context, Majungasaurus was not behaving abnormally. It was maximizing survival in a constrained environment. In ecosystems where resources are unpredictable, flexibility often matters more than preference. Cannibalism, while harsh by human standards, can become a consistent and effective survival strategy. Reveal how survival behaviors. There is a larger scale, but the environment is. While North America, centers, relying on numbers for strategy reduced the risk from group to move efficiently across under normal conditions. In the floodplain, but seasonal shifts could change everything. As heavy rains arrived, rivers expanded rapidly, turning familiar routes into dangerous terrain. Herds attempting to escape rising water were often funneled into confined areas, trapped between swollen river channels and higher ground. Movement slowed, individuals became separated, and the protective structure of the herd began to break down. In times like these, predators such as Dunkleosteus could capitalize, focusing their efforts on the weakest individuals. Because of the disaster, the real strong current and deep water could overwhelm. But they were not the prime. Once conditions reached a critical point, survival was no longer determined by strength or numbers. This pattern is preserved in the fossil record. Large bone beds containing hundreds of Centrosaurus individuals show clear evidence of sudden mass death events. These were not isolated incidents, but repeated outcomes of environmental stress. Influence who survives from moment nature determines the limits of survival. Environment shifts beyond control, strategies can collapse, disappear in a single event. In the end, predators wipe out entire herds, guarantee survival. Size meets a different when environment in South America during the late Cretaceous, Argentinosaurus stood at the upper limit of size on land. Reaching over 30 meters in length and weighing up to 70 tons, it relied on scale as its primary defense. It did not need speed or aggression. Its survival strategy was simple: grow large enough that few animals would even attempt to challenge it. For a long time, that assumption held true. But fossil evidence adds an important detail. In the same regions, remains of Mapusaurus have been discovered together, including individuals of different sizes and ages. Mapusaurus was a large carnivore, built for land-based hunting. It had a balanced body, strong hind limbs for movement, and blade-like teeth designed to cut through flesh efficiently. A capable predator may not have been size, but on its own, they may have lived or moved in groups. If true, their hunting strategy relied not on a single attack but on coordination, a factor that alters the dynamic entirely. Not be enough to challenge an Anomalocaris, but a group-decisive moment. By approaching could force a much larger animal. Each movement would over time, even a single Mapusaurus would rather than ending the encounter quickly, the strategy would be gradual. One individual moves in, makes contact, then retreats. Another follows from a different angle. The pressure builds over time. As mobility decreases, the larger animal becomes easier to manage. In this kind of interaction, strength alone is not the deciding factor. Time, positioning, and shared effort become more important. Even the largest animals are not beyond reach when facing coordinated pressure from multiple predators. Even coordinated predators are not always the greatest threat. Sometimes, the danger is invisible. In late Cretaceous ecosystems, large carnivores such as Nanuqsaurus often relied on scavenging as part of their survival strategy. In harsh or seasonal environments, finding a carcass could be more efficient than chasing live prey. Over time was not unusual, carried a hidden risk. Returning to the same food. As a carcass begins to decay, bacteria multiply rapidly within the tissue. Under certain conditions, these bacteria can produce powerful toxins. Once present, the toxin does not stay contained. The carcass can ingest it and is around the same food source. Any predator that feeds one contaminated animals in a short period of time. Not a fight, toxic food source. This creates a chain reaction. A similar process can be observed today in outbreaks of botulism among modern birds. Bacteria growing in decaying material release toxins that move through the food chain, affecting any animal that consumes it. In this context, feeding behavior becomes a vulnerability. What begins as an efficient survival strategy can quickly turn into a pathway for collapse. The food chain does not always transfer energy. Under the wrong conditions, it can transfer something far more dangerous. Survival does not end with finding food. Jaekelopterus reveals a different kind of strategy, one focused not on dominance, but on protection. Jaekelopterus was a large, fast-moving theropod, likely covered in feathers and built with long limbs adapted for an active lifestyle. Unlike many giant predators, it was part of a group known for more complex behaviors, especially around reproduction. It's positioned directly over their neck to cover a ring of eggs. It helps regulate and reduce exposure. Fossil evidence shows staying at the nest, the adult cannot move freely with spring. Instead, remains in place and absorbs that. The structure of these nests and the positioning of the adults closely resemble brooding behavior in modern birds. The same principles apply. Heat transfer, coverage, and constant presence all contribute to successful development. This suggests that such behaviors were already established long before birds became widespread. What makes this significant is the level of commitment. Reproduction is not just about producing eggs, but about ensuring they survive long enough to hatch. That requires time, energy, and exposure to danger. Systems took shape. Strategies that prioritized, in this context, the individual, but about long before pattern becomes clear as an unbeatable species. From Spinosaurus losing its advantage when water systems changed, to Argentinosaurus facing coordinated pressure, survival was never guaranteed. Even dominant predators could fall to invisible threats, and even the smallest creatures could gain an edge through adaptation. What truly shaped life was not strength alone, but a combination of factors. The environment could shift without warning. Adaptations could become advantages or weaknesses depending on context. And sometimes, chance itself determined the outcome. Evolution is not a story of perfection. It is a process of constant adjustment. Every species exists within a balance that can change at any moment, and that is what makes the world of dinosaurs so fascinating. Subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for watching.